Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
David?
Do you have a little better idea at this stage what, if anything, Tyron Smith will be able to do this week for you?
Tyron will not work today. Mari will be limited, but the practice is limited, number one. We're only going to practice for an hour and 16 minutes because it's coming off a Sunday night, and with an uncommon opponent, we want to spend a little more time in the film room.
Did Tyron Smith call plays? Not Tyron Smith. Jaron Curse call plays instead of Mike in this game, and can you talk about that change?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some game planning components to it, but yes, we made the change. Mike was still part of the rotation, but I thought Jaron did an excellent job with the communication.
Some of it to free up Micah a little bit to take a little off his plate so he can just go and play?
Well, I think it's less responsibility, but there's other factors, in the particulars of game planning, that played into that. But how we move forward, we'll determine that this week. What
about Jaron makes him good for that type of role? And how did it help?
He's an excellent communicator. I mean, just you can see in the back end. I mean, things. That was probably about as clean as of a communication performance that we've had. A lot of adjustments in the game based on how we, they went heavy protection, so kind of changed our game plan. And he handled it seamlessly.
When you mentioned that practice will be adjusted today, what won't y'all do that you would usually do on Wednesday?
What won't we do? The fundamental component will be shortened. The special teams is shortened. Cut out the competitive periods when they get it down to about an hour and 15. It's actually an hour and 16 minutes. So just factor in what coming off the late night, getting back. All those things factor into it. And frankly, just not playing the Broncos in some time it is important for us to spend some more time on the video.
Tyron having his health issues, do you want to give Lyle some snaps at left tackle?
Yeah, definitely. We got some options we're looking at. Frankly, I don't want to tell you just because we rather Denver find out when they find out. So I'm sure I just won't be the first time you ask, but this is the answer. So yeah.
Is it unlikely that Tyron will be able to play this week based on where he is now with this injury?
He'd be pressed to play this week. Yeah.
Broncos have blocked 3 field goals in the previous 2 games. Shelby Harris got his hands on 2. How much of an emphasis will you place on that this week, and what are some of the coaching points you find?
And it was one of the special team objectives. So we recognize a number of things that they do a little differently that we may have seen or not seen, haven't seen. But really, a big part of today is really locking down on the personnel, just because these are matchups that we haven't been involved with. You go through this when you play the AFC teams every 4 years. So, but yeah, we're definitely aware of it.
You guys haven't played when you're switching guys or moving guys around from right side, left side in the offensive line. What's the biggest challenge?
Footwork. I mean, it's the footwork, and that's why you look at all the components that go into the game planning too. You look at the matchups. So, but the biggest thing is footwork.
I know it wasn't right to left, but when Zach moved over last year, what was something y'all learned from that you could take if there's any adjustments in the line this week?
Well, I think you look at last year. I mean, we obviously had a totally different situation. We had multiple injuries, and I think particularly up front, do you make one move for one move? Because being in sync with the player next to you is very important. I mean, we talk about this all the time, the continuity of the offensive line and the success it brings you not only as an offense, but I think it really affects the way the game is played too. So and these are just discussions that we've had since Monday morning.
Does the shortened practice today allow you to ease Dak into it a little bit easier than if it had been a normal Wednesday?
You can look at it that way. Yeah, I mean, it's he would probably have been limited in a normal Wednesday, and this is a limited practice, so he gets to carry the full status. So
You said if all goes well today, tomorrow he should be full go. Are there any, or what thresholds do you look for, and how has he changed in the last?
Just really how he comes out of today's practice. I mean, obviously it's no different than any player once he goes through the, release to play through the rehab process. So he's crossed that hurdle, and so he has a certain number of reps he'll take today, and we'll evaluate in the morning.
Was there like a statistical or analytical thing that you guys have with calf injuries? If you wait 2 weeks, it's X% less likely to re-injure it or things like that?
It's not that clear, but I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, you got protocols on all injuries, but obviously there's different types of calf injuries. Is it in the belly of the muscle? Is it is it near the the tendon? And so all those factors apply into that research.
Any other players who won't be able to do much for you today because of injury, or anyone else on the COVID list?
No, not really. I'm sorry. Yeah, Blake Jarwin, his hip is he took the hit during the game, so he will not practice today. We'll see maybe tomorrow what he can do.
You were talking earlier Monday just about the rash of penalties you've had over these last 2 games. How do you balance the spirit and the play style that's developing versus crossing that line, and how do you address that with your players going into a game now that's been a recurring issue for a couple of years?
I mean, it was it's probably about 6 to 8 minute segment of the team meeting today. So I went back through all the penalties. Did an extensive penalty report and presentation, I guess you would say, coming out of the bye week. So I think it's important to look at each and every one. I mean, you can't just say, hey, I didn't agree with the call. That's not the deal. We've been pushing this play style since training camp. Remember at training camp, we didn't really feel we were where we needed to be. We got the play style where it needs to be, so we want to continue that. We want to play above that, but we need to be more disciplined at the finish of plays. That's where a number of our penalties occur. Particularly if you just look at the last defensive drive. Also the holding penalties on the later drives in the last 2 weeks. So that's a big emphasis for us.
And how do you address it? I mean, you're a positive reinforcement guy. Some coaches would say, well, if this continues, you're going to sit out for a series or a play. Do you do that at all, or do you take a different approach?
I think you live and learn. I mean, there's a time in my coaching career, if there's a false start, you just yell, get them out of there, next guy in. I mean, I did that for years. But when you reevaluate that, you step away. Is that the best answer? I mean, it may be the best answer in training, but and just take Randy Gregory for instance. I needed Randy we all needed Randy at the end of that game. So, I think you learn from them situations. But I think there are times, there are limits, the thresholds you want to call it, that if a player crosses it, you definitely have to make the change. And also, let's just be honest. I mean, who are you changing them for too? And what's the situation in the game? Because we're there to win. I'm not there trying to, appease whoever with my presentation of discipline. The discipline is in the mental and emotional decision making, particularly at those times. And we got to make sure as coaches we're always putting the players in position to win.
What went into the decision to waive Bradley and I, and when a guy has an offside penalty like that, how does that factor?
It really wasn't it really wasn't. And frankly, I had a chance to talk to Bradley about it. This roster development that we're in this year, I mean, it's unique. I mean, it's unprecedented. The number of players we have in the building is awesome, but the hard part is, you're trying to move guys on to 53, guys back to the practice squad and so forth. So, I'm hoping today, we're able to get Bradley back on the practice squad. So this is just all part of the forecasting and trying to get guys up and moving guys around, because we do want to keep all these guys.
How Sean McEwen looked in his return, in building return?
I thought he looked good. He needed another week, so I'm hopeful that he can have a good week this week. So he'll have an opportunity to compete, to be up on special teams as a starting point.
After these last 2 games, Coach, what's the one thing that stands out to you about your team this season?
After the last 2 days?
Last 2 games.
Oh, 2 games? Well, I mean, we're winning different ways. We're getting over the adversity humps, whether we've created them or the opposition's created them. So building confidence, I would say, is probably number one. We're a more confident team than we were 2 games ago.
Have you always kind of taken this approach when it's uncommon opponents, in terms of focusing more on the mental side of it than the physical side of it? Or is it more of, you had a Sunday night game and you got back late?
Well, it's a combination of both. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an uncommon opponent. You have to, we normally get, we turn the page on Mondays. We correct the video with the players, and then part of the last 20, 30 minutes of the meetings on Monday are dedicated to the next opponent. So, so this, I mean, that's the way I've always done it.
Michael Gallup still progressing where you want him to go? Maybe he'll play this week?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we'll see. We'd like to see another week's work, and we're really trusting the rehab process and timelines that what's ideal, what's a little early. We'll see how the week's work goes for Michael.
You were talking about discipline penalties. Did you see the video? I'm sure you did, of CD seemingly being choked by Harrison Smith. Have y'all sent that to the league? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we get to send in plays every week, so you're only allowed to send in 10. So I mean, it's definitely a play that we looked at, talked about. Yeah, so I mean, that's all part of the officiating process.
Coach, I know you've been in meetings, but there's been some news this morning. The Giants had an outbreak of COVID. Now there's talk that Aaron Rodgers has COVID and may or may not have been vaccinated. When you get this late in the season, and this is a question that relates to your team, how well do you check whether these players are vaccinated or not, and how important is it to have player availability as a result of it? As you start getting competitive, we start talking about home field advantage.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's nonstop. It's current. It's part of our scheduling. We have testing protocols that we still adhere to. So I can't say enough about Jim Maurer. I mean, he's the point person on all this. So our players do an extraordinary job of communicating, whether it's a family member or a neighbor, or any time that we had an individual that had a runny nose this morning, so we went and checked him. So I mean, that's really the everyday process that we're into. So we're well aware where everybody stands. So, but yeah, it's part of our everyday operation.
But it's very clear to you guys who's vaccinated and who's not because
Correct.
of the testing and things along those lines. In other words, somebody couldn't just bring in a card.
Someone just gonna bring in the.
Just bring in a card from the outside. You guys know who's actually vaccinated and who's not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I was just looking for.
Yep.
Mike, your punter is having a statistical, really good year. Would you talk a little bit about the way he's factored into?
Oh, he's punting too much, number one. No, I think he's, I can see why we're excited when we had the opportunity to sign him. So no, he's a really good athlete, great teammate. I really like the battery of all three guys. There's not a day that you don't walk in Bones' office and those three there or watching tape. So they spend a ton of time together. So no, he's been a great addition.
With Cedric and his, ability to throw it, is he a guy that say, hey, I can do some other things throwing here too if you want to get me involved? Does he try to play that game at all with you guys?
I mean, no, that's part of it. And I mean, Cedric's a very established member of our football team, and I know Kellen and Adam have, very fond of him and his talents. But yeah, I mean, we do want to stay creative, so stay tuned.
Lane Johnson and Calvin Ridley have each taken time away from their teams this season to focus on mental health. In your years coaching, what have you learned about the mental health challenges that NFL players face, and what's the role of the coach in helping them promote positive?
Well, I think the biggest thing with mental health is just the fact that it's now to the forefront of the conversation is open. So, whether it's personal or professional experiences that you encounter throughout your time in this league, it's refreshing to see individuals seeking help, and more importantly, the ones that are being open about it, how much they're helping others. So I think we're definitely in a transition. I know in our industry where it's people are making progress just because not only the education and the opportunity and the resources that are there, but they're being utilized and they're being talked about. So I think it's been a huge step, for society in the big picture, but just really proud of the individuals that are stepping up and frankly sharing their story.
Mike, could you speak to the time that you and Dan spent recently through the MVP program?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jay Glazer, I can't say enough about his vision and genuineness to put together. I mean, it's when you think about it, it's the core of it is when you lose your team. We've all been part of athletics, or whether it's through the military, through sports, and then when it's over, you lose your team, and then there are emotional struggles that you go through. So just the connection, and if you ever had a chance to be around it, it's special. It's a special group. Just the admiration, intelligence and just the experience of the people that share their story and the connectiveness and the impact that they're making and really forming a new team. And it's a team that's very close, and it's an outstanding network that will continue to grow, and it's going to grow here in Dallas. So Dan and I are very proud to be a part of that.
With the KZ situation during the bye week and what happened with Ruggs in Vegas, how do you use that as a reminder to your players of the resources available to them in those situations?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about it when we first got back together in the bye week. I mean, these are opportunities to learn lessons, and it's tragic. When you see the results of an accident or a situation like that, and your heart goes out to the loved ones that lose someone in that situation. So you don't want to see anybody be in that position. So it's definitely something that you're able to talk about and learn from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,